This is the story of how one woman, Amy Bock, allegedly orchestrated the theft of $250 million, money that was supposed to feed hungry kids. A federal jury called her the mastermind. But that verdict isn't the whole story. To really understand how a scheme this big, this brazen, could ever happen, we need to go back. Back to a time of global panic when the rules were changing and a fortune was ripe for the picking. The perfect storm. In early 2020, the world just stopped. The COVID-19 pandemic threw everything into chaos, and with that chaos came unprecedented need. Schools closed, businesses were shuttered, and millions of families suddenly had no idea where their next meal was coming from. In response, the US government opened the floodgates, unleashing trillions in aid. A small but vital part of this was the Federal Child Nutrition Program, designed to make sure kids didn't go hungry. To get food out as fast as possible, the US Department of Agriculture waived some of its strictest rules. Now, for-profit restaurants could get in on the action, and food could be handed out anywhere, not just at schools or daycares. It was a well-intentioned shortcut meant to slice through red tape during a crisis. But it also created the perfect storm, opening the door for what the US attorney would later call the single largest COVID-19 fraud scheme in the nation. And right at the center of that storm was a small nonprofit called Feeding Our Future, and its ambitious founder, Amy Bock. The savior, introducing Amy Bock. Before she was a convicted felon, Amy Bock was the founder and executive director of Feeding Our Future, a nonprofit she started back in 2016. Her organization's mission was simple: act as a sponsor, a middleman connecting food distribution sites with federal money to feed kids in need. Before the pandemic, her operation was pretty modest. In 2019, Feeding Our Future claimed about $4 million in federal funds. It was a respectable number, but nothing that would set off any alarm bells. When the pandemic hit, Bock presented Feeding Our Future as the hero of the hour, ready to step up and meet the overwhelming demand. She claimed the explosion in need was real, fueled by record unemployment and families who had never struggled before. To the outside world, she was a leader fighting to get food to those who desperately needed it. But prosecutors saw something else entirely: a gatekeeper who looked at a crisis and saw a golden opportunity. Building the empire of lies. The growth of Feeding Our Future was absolutely staggering. From just $3.4 million in 2019, its claims skyrocketed to nearly $200 million by 2021, a nearly 60-fold increase. The organization exploded from a few dozen meal sites to over 250 across Minnesota. But behind these unbelievable numbers was an audacious and meticulously organized criminal enterprise. The scheme was a tangled web of shell companies, fake invoices, and phantom meals. Bock, as the head of Feeding Our Future, was the essential hub. She was the one who approved hundreds of new food sites, many of which were created just days or weeks before claiming to serve thousands of meals a day. These sites weren't community centers, they were often just names on a piece of paper, tied to people whose only goal was to get rich. The process itself was shockingly simple. A site operator would cook up a fraudulent invoice and a fake roster of kids' names, sometimes pulling them from random online name generators. These documents claimed they were feeding thousands of children every single day. In one of the most glaring examples, 21 meal sites along a single 1.8-mile stretch of Lake Street in Minneapolis collectively claimed to be feeding as many kids as existed in the entire Minneapolis school district. Bock's role was to take these obviously fraudulent claims, sign off on them, and submit them to the Minnesota Department of Education for reimbursement. The government would then send taxpayer money to Feeding Our Future, and Bock would take her cut before sending the rest to the fake meal sites. This cut came in two forms: millions in administrative fees and a river of cash kickbacks and bribes from the very site operators she approved. One cooperating witness testified that in this world, Amy Bock was a god. She held all the power. Section 4. A lavish betrayal. While Feeding Our Future was supposedly feeding hungry children, the conspirators were busy feeding their own greed. The $250 million in stolen funds wasn't just sitting in bank accounts. It was being spent on a breathtaking array of luxury goods. The money funded purchases of real estate in Minnesota, Ohio, and even property in Kenya and Turkey. It paid for luxury cars, international travel, and designer clothes. While prosecutors didn't accuse Bock of personally buying mansions, they laid out how she profited through a pay-to-play scheme, demanding cash kickbacks from operators just to let them in on the scam. This stolen money wasn't just a number on a page. It was a lavish betrayal of public trust. Following her conviction, a judge ordered Bock to forfeit over $5 million in assets, including a Porsche, cash, and luxury goods like a Louis Vuitton purse and diamond jewelry that were seized from her home. All of this was happening while real families were struggling through a global crisis. Section 5. The walls close in. An enterprise this large and brazen couldn't stay hidden forever. By late 2020, officials at the Minnesota Department of Education grew deeply suspicious. The numbers were just too incredible to be believed. They started to deny applications and tried to turn off the spigot, but Amy Bock didn't back down. She went on the attack. In November 2020, she sued the MD, alleging racial discrimination. She claimed the state was unfairly targeting her nonprofit because it primarily served the Somali American community. It was a cynical and, for a time, brilliant move. Fearing a public relations nightmare, a judge ordered the MD to resume payments, which continued to flow. A prosecutor would later say this lawsuit was a key part of the conspiracy, stating, "She didn't just facilitate the fraud, she fought for it." Her victory was short-lived. The MD had already contacted the FBI in the spring of 2021, and a massive federal investigation was quietly heating up. Wiretaps, financial records, and confidential informants were starting to piece together the truth. The walls were finally closing in. Section 6. The Takedown and the Trial. In January 2022, the investigation blew up into public view with a series of dramatic FBI raids. The whole scheme unraveled, leading to charges against 78 people in what became Minnesota's biggest fraud case. Amy Bock's trial began in February 2025 and lasted over 5 weeks. Prosecutors portrayed her as the absolute center of the conspiracy. Lead prosecutor Joe Thompson told the jury, "She was at the head of the scheme from day one. She signed every single fraudulent claim that was submitted to the state of Minnesota." They presented damning evidence, including text messages where Bock herself seemed to compare her organization to the mob. Taking the stand in her own defense, Bock was defiant. She blamed everyone but herself. She claimed the explosive growth was because of legitimate pandemic need. She argued it was her employees who handled the fraudulent paperwork, and that she was just copied on emails she never asked to get. "And now I'm charged with a federal crime because somebody chose to email me something," she testified. The jury didn't buy it. After deliberating for only about 5 hours, they found Amy Bock guilty on all counts, including wire fraud, conspiracy, and bribery. As the verdict was read, Bock cried before being handcuffed and taken into custody to await sentencing. This case is a shocking reminder of how systems designed to help can be exploited. The scale is almost hard to wrap your head around. What do you think is the biggest lesson from the Feeding Our Future scandal? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want to see more deep dives into complex cases like this, make sure to like this video and subscribe. Conclusion. The aftermath and the legacy. Amy Bock now awaits sentencing and faces a significant prison term. A judge has already ordered her to forfeit more than $5 million in assets, including cash and a Porsche. Of the 78 people charged in connection with the Feeding Our Future scheme, the vast majority have now been convicted or have pleaded guilty. The government has recovered around $60 to $75 million of the stolen money, but much of the rest is gone for good, spent on lavish lifestyles or moved overseas where it can't be seized. The case has been called the shame of Minnesota by the state's own governor. It exposed gaping holes in government oversight and left a deep stain on a program meant to be a safety net for the most vulnerable. While Amy Bock maintained her innocence to the very end, claiming she was just a scapegoat, a jury decided she was something else entirely, the mastermind who turned a public health crisis into her own personal gold rush.